Okay, I want you to jump back with what you know now. So all watching deer behavior, all the different quirks, most specifically during the rut. So most people were you worked. You say had 1 week vacation or 3 weeks vacation and then 1 week off. So you took the whole month of November off. And for a lot of people, November is their make or break of filling their buck tag or not.
Mm-hmm.
What's the 80-20 rule of shooting a buck in November for the everyday guy? Maybe he has a 1 acre food plot. Maybe he has a 2 acre food plot. Maybe he hunts public. Maybe, you name it. Like, just think back to you when you were 20 years old. And But you know what you know now. It'd be like, man, if I knew that, I would definitely kill a buck every November.
Yeah. Knowing what I know now, I would say skip November and come in October. That's when you're going to shoot your best deer.
Most specifically, because you like, I was listening to another episode before this, but like you like the first 10 days of any season.
Yeah. But although I should take that back a little bit. That is if you can come, if you have the time to do some research and scouting.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't, you're just going to go blind at it. Then it's got to be November because that's when you're going to have the most fun. Let's face it, it's the most fun. You rattle and they're grunting and they're chasing and stuff. So that is the most fun. And if you didn't have time to do any kind of research, that would probably be your best chance of success. And right now, like people used to ask me all the time about like the moon phases and stuff like that. And I was always like, I don't know. I don't really know. I don't see any correlation really to anything because you have one day that's phenomenal and the next day can be the same type of thing and it's totally different. And I would say, but I hunt every day, so it doesn't really matter what the weather is, the moon is, or I'm out every day, and that's going to be giving me my best odds of killing one. Mm-hmm. But now that I start looking at more of the moon information and stuff, you really see the correlation of it.
See, I'll admit it, and I think when you ask a lot of people, they're like, the moon is just BS. It's just BS. It doesn't make sense. There's the scientific research that shows there's no difference or very nominal. Just explain to me like I'm in second grade, and I say, hey, what is the moon, and how does it impact deer movement?
So you can see, if you act like a musky fisherman, like a fisherman, they'll live and die by it. Yeah. And it's basically like when the moon is overhead and underfoot, it has the most pull, like on tides and everything. Mm-hmm. And that's like for like musky fishing, we see it so much. Like you just get follows or nothing. Also you go, when's the major at? And you kind of live by when's the major and when's the minor on that. And you'll see that as you're coming up to that major, all of a sudden you get some follows. And then you're like, so when you see those follows, like, okay, where's the biggest ones that we saw follows? Like, we'll just go around all day, all different spots, and you get a couple of follows. If I find like a 50-inch or something, okay, we mark that spot. You go back and, you can come right up like a couple, like 20 minutes before that major just begins. And you'll see, you cast out and you might get one to follow. And then the next one might be a little aggressive. And then you maybe go do a loop around, get right like 10 minutes later, getting close to that, and you throw it, and it's the first crank, boom, you got them. And it's just like, it happens. I've just seen it so many times on fish that, they're right there. But you can understand fish a little bit more because the pressure's in the water and stuff, because the moon, the most pull and stuff that you can see on tides. But it also has something to do with deer and feeding. And you really see it. Like I would be the same way. I'd be like, people do that research and they don't, it doesn't make any correlation and stuff like that. But it really does. Like, I know like Adam Hayes went to Pope and Young and he got them to give him all the records. So like over all the history of Pope and Young anyway, like what dates those deer were shot on, like every Pope and Young deer. And it's crazy because you look at it and it's like 51%. I think it was just like at 50 or 51% were shot like in those days of the best with the moon overhead or underfoot within the peak times. But you say, well, that's 50-50. But those moon days like that are only a few days a month. So you look at, okay, it's way fewer days that moon is perfect like that than's not. You might have like 20 days compared to, 7 or something like that might be your best days that are. So to me, you say, man, if 51% are shot on those days and they're only 20% of the month's days, that's saying something. But like during the rut, you can kind of throw that out. No matter what, a hot day will trump everything. Weather, a lot of times cool fronts will trump all that stuff. But I really see it a lot when I'm mule deer hunting. When you're just on feeding patterns, there's no rut whatsoever involved. Because even here, like when it opens October 1st, they're still kind of, you see them chasing does around, bumping does. They're closer to that rut action than not. But when you see it, like when you're out west and stuff, like when you're hunting in August, where there's they don't even want to be around a doe. They're all just by them, in bachelor group something. And you look at it like when they all bed down in the morning, and you go and you stalk on them, and sometimes you get in there, it's like, gosh, I gotta wait for them to stand up. And sometimes you're sitting there just cooking in the sun for 90 degrees then, like for 6 hours before they stand up. But I look at that and I say, well, when's the peak time? And I'll look at that a lot of times. So sometimes I was like, okay, it's not till 1 o'clock today, and it's like 8 in the morning right now. So I'm gonna sit here. I'm gonna make my plan how to get in there and make sure I have it right on like my Onyx. I'm gonna make sure I know exactly where it is, because when you get down there, it's gonna look way different. And I'll just kind of mess around. Like it's not like, hey, I'm gonna try to get in there right away. So a lot of times I'm just like, I'll just wait, and like by 10 o'clock or something, I'll start going in there. So I get in there like at 11, where I think, okay, I'm in the wheelhouse here. I'm within range. And sometimes you see him, and sometimes you don't, because stuff is taller than you think sometimes, but you know right where he is, because I spent that extra time to make sure I know exactly on the map. When I get over there, I know when I'm in the wheelhouse. I can look at, okay, I'm 200 yards. Okay, I'm going to get into 100. Okay, I know he's right here. Sometimes even if I don't see him, I know he's within like 60. And then somebody maybe catch that little bit of an antler. So, okay, he's right. He's right there. He's right where I thought. And then all of a sudden you get to like 1 o'clock, whoop, they stand up, start feeding and stuff. And you see it so many times that how when they just stand up, and a lot of times just stand up feeding around in the spot and pee and poop and lay back down again. But at least I have a pretty good idea when I think they're going to at least stand up. And I go by that all the time. And you'd be surprised at how many times it gets right to that major that they're standing up and feeding around. And, it's the same thing like for deer. So I always look at it and say, these are the days that I think it's gonna be good, and it does a lot of times that you see it, but it's just one of those things that's like, I think that it definitely makes a difference. But there's so many other things that can trump it, like I said, weather and rut. Just throw that out the window. It's just whenever it's a hot doe or whatever. But you do a lot of things that like as far as even washing your clothes and stay clean. People are like, well, they're going to smell you anyway. I mean, you can take drugs and put them in an injection, mold them inside a ball and put it in your gas tank, and a drug dog will find it. You think you can do anything with scent like that? But it's not necessarily that. Like, so when we go around here and I'm, checking fields and stuff all the time, you don't do anything for scent control. These deer get a snout full of Lee and Tiffany and Cameron and Reagan every single day. So they smell us all the time. If a deer, if they're afraid of human scent, they'd never stop running. So when you go out and you do everything, you wash all your clothes, you do all that stuff, they're still going to smell you. But it's like, as long as you can knock it down some, they think, well, he was here 20 minutes ago, or he's 100 yards, not 20 right there. I would say like that's like a 2% increase of your chances if you do this. Okay, and then your exit and entries into something. How am I going to get in? How am I going to get out of that thing and keep in and make sure that I don't bump deer going in, like we were talking about with Tiffany today. And she's like, it's so hard to get her to go out on time. She's always got a million things going on. Well, it doesn't matter. They don't come out till 5:30 anyway. What if you got there at 4? Maybe they become on at 4:30. Now, if your field is filled with does at 5 instead of 6, that's when those bucks come out, is when the whole field is full of does. Like at this time, they feel like when it's safe. So how do you know that? So going out early might be a 1 or 2% chance more. But you start adding these things together, and that's why I say the moon. It might be, like I said, I've noticed it so many times working, and especially like for fishing, and then like that when we do all the early season stuff. And for most people, let's face it, you got to hunt the weekends or something. Even people that are super avid hunters, how many days a year are you really out? You're taking, even if it's every day of the season, on the weekends of every day for a couple of months. Okay, you got 30 days in a stand. We do that every month, and starting in August. Mm-hmm. So we hunt like 150 days. So really, the days that we get to hunt is probably 10 years of experience almost of an average person that just has the weekends. And then even on those weekends, how many of them do you have other things going and everything else? So we get to see a lot, and so I look at that stuff a lot. And it's like, it's not always, but it's a lot of times. Mm-hmm. And like I said, when I make the predictions, I think I'll shoot them on this day, and how many times we've done that. And then, especially if it coincides with like a a cool front or something like that. But again, I think like the moon stuff is like another 1 or 2%. But you start adding all these things together, and all of a sudden you got 20, 30, 50% better chance of killing one. And that's the difference between, and people can say, oh, you don't need to do that, whatever. But I don't look at things that way. I look at things, if I can do something that's 1% more better chance, I take that, and I take this, and I'll do every little thing to try to get that extra 5% chance of killing them. But that's the difference between somebody who goes out and hunts their entire career and has, 2 deer on their wall compared to look at our wall. That's the difference of just doing everything. And of course, it's opportunity and stuff too, like the number of days and everything. But there's a lot of stuff that we do to make sure that we're successful at those times. And that's the difference between the guy can sit, your keyboard warriors, you can do that, you're going to do that. And it's like, yeah, they got their 120 on the wall. And in the meantime, we got so many deer heads, we can't even put them in the house. So that's the difference, I think, is that little percentage pieces that you got to pay attention to every little thing. If you think it can give you 1% chance more, then you take that, and then you do another one, and another one, and another one. Pretty soon you got a 20% chance more of shooting a deer than your neighbor does. And that's why, like, our neighbors may kill 1 or 2, that we want to shoot, but it's 90%. If we have a big one, we're going to kill it, and they're not, because of those extra things that we do that they don't. And I get that because it's not their job. It's my job to do that, and so it should be that way. But getting back to the
I got an education on paying attention to details.
Yeah, so it's those little details that make the difference. And so those are things that over the years that you've learned, because it was like those first 2 bucks I showed you, that one right there and the one downstairs, those are just dumb luck. They're just like most people. And we talked about how many covers, look at the covers at North American Whitetail, these giant deer. They're not by people like me or Don Kiske or Ryan Siders. And they're just average guys went out and sat on a stump and shot one. So it could be random. You can always get it. You can always luck into a big one, but you do that one time in your life. It's like winning the lottery. So how did we win the lottery every year? Because I look at it, I think last year was the first year in 20-something years that I didn't shoot like a Boone and Crockett gross.
That's crazy.
First year.
Yeah.
And that was by choice, because I had 5 of them that were like 180s, and the one I think was 190 that we passed. But because I wanted to try to get a bigger one, but you think like that was what we all strove for, to try to see if you can shoot a 170. And now like 170, sometimes 170, you don't even take your bow off the hook, because you're you're trying to, you've got a bunch, and like in those non-EHD years, we have a lot of them, and you can get them, if you can get them old enough, you can get them that big. But that's just, like I said, just all those little things that people, they think, I don't need to do that. I don't need to worry about that. But those are the things I learned, like different between like now and then. You relied on luck then. I don't rely on luck now. I can tell you. You ask me in July, I'll probably tell you what deer I'm going to shoot. I can tell you what field, what time of it, what I can look at the moon stuff. I can look at that. Okay, this is the days I think I'm going to shoot them, and about 95%.
That
correct.
is crazy.
Yeah, and you try to show people. We do some YouTube stuff on that, and just showing it's not rocket science. You just but number one, you have to live in a place that has them.
Sure.
And that's why we're in Iowa, but like people in Kansas and Illinois and Nebraska, all those places could do that if you did the work and if you wanted to spend some time doing it. But the other thing is, October rather than November. Like I said, if you're just going out, you're going to see the most action. But if you've done your research, if you have time in the summer to find a big one, your best chance is going to be those first 10 days of October for here. And especially, it'd be really that much more if you lived in Minnesota still or whatever and opens on the 15th. Or Kansas, some of those places.
Kentucky.
Yeah, Kentucky, those places that you get them on that feeding pattern. They're pretty predictable, and especially if you're, once you hit that moon or a little cold front or something, you're gonna see them in daylight during that month. And the nice thing about early season is, they're alive still. Like for me here, I don't have any. They're not gonna go across the street even. They are living on 10 acres basically. That's their life. Is they're bedding in this ridge. They're walking down, feeding this one, walking back up and bedding. And get up, and they get up a number of times during the day because I've watched them plenty of times. They sit all day. They get up and feed around, eat acorns, lay back down 10 feet from where they were before. But that's their routine. They're not leaving anywhere. Mm-hmm. So if you got one, it's like you got a big one, just kind of get. That's why we do food plots around. Like I said, we did for specific deer. If does in food plots for specific deer, get them coming to something throughout the summer. And don't, like we do beans or something like that. If they come to a bean field, you got to disc up that edge of that beans and put like winter wheat or clover in, because those are going to change in the middle of September and they're going to move off of that. So you're going to be watching this deer the whole summer. Right when you get to hunting season, he's going to disappear on you, and you're thinking, oh, they knew it was hunting season. No, all your stuff is dying. You need to plant something where that's growing. It could be clover or wheat or something like that. They're going to want to be on something that's growing in October and not dying. So we just take out, if there's a big one on a bean field, then okay, I'll disc up the edge and put clover or wheat or something in there, or corn. We'll rototill up the corn and put the wheat in there, so we have them for that first few days. But at least they're not usually broken up by them. In those first days, they're never broken, so you don't have to worry about broken racks and points and stuff like that. And you know that they're alive. So every day you go out, you might not see them, but in that first 2 weeks of the season, if you have the wind right, you're going to see them. They're going to come out in daylight at some point. It's going to be a weather change. It's going to be the moon. It could be those little things. They're going to come out in daylight. But you get to the rut, and every day as they take in, you dry your Etch-a-Sketch, and you dry your masterpiece, and every night you got to just shake it up and start over the next day, because you have no idea if they're alive. You don't know if they're on your place. That's the one time that you're just to me, that's my worst time. It just gives me the worst, ulcer stuff. Is I'll see your buck disappears for 5 days. They're going to. They're going to be gone for 7 or 10 days with a doe someplace. But is that, I'll see you get to day 10. Oh, is he dead? Did a neighbor shoot him or something? Or, and then okay, there he's back again. It's just so much of that. And then they come back and they're broken up and stuff too. So, I mean, if you had the time, I would never even think that I would take all my vacation at the beginning, but I'd have to have done my research and know that I got a big one and where he's coming out, and have the ability to put in a food plot. Like when there's beans, if they're coming out, you can see them coming out those bean fields all summer. You have to have the ability to, okay, I got to go in there and put, a winter wheat field in here. Right then, I want something growing right then to keep them coming. They'll still eat those beans as they're yellowing and even dead, obviously, but they have to have that growing stuff. When they start turning, they'll move on to something else and not come back if you don't.
So for the 99% of people that don't prepare and put as much effort into this as you, so I get that. That's a great plan. But most people aren't doing that. So you gotta get just how do I kill a buck? And maybe most people are I got 3 or 4 here on my farm, and I'd be happy with 3 or 4 of those deer. Mm-hmm. In November, everyone talks about being super random, but there's got to be some trends, or there's got to be something that, whether it's a favorite food source the first part of November or favorite terrain feature, really elementary, but I feel like it's a good reminder.
Yeah, like I said, there's some things that seem elementary, but there's always people that are coming up that were me when I was 14 and didn't know any of this. Mm-hmm. So that is a lot of that stuff comes down to when we're shed hunting in the off season again, we know where all the does bed, where the deer just in general bed, but mostly where does do. So if you don't have time to do all that stuff, they say, I'm just going someplace new. I just drew Iowa. I'm going to go hunt in public. Okay, the first thing I do if they're in the rut, I'd look for the ridges that are south-facing slopes, because that's in the whole winter, that's where the deer will bed. And even as you get to November, it'll be cold, and they'll be bedding. The does will be bedding on any south-facing slopes on those ridges. Okay, that's where the bucks will probably be cruising on that stuff. They'll probably be looking, to go if they're going to be looking for the doe. So where would does normally be? And in November, it's usually getting cold. They're going to be on south-facing slopes on stuff. And again, we're talking in Iowa where there's a lot of bucks and rattling and stuff works good. I always make sure there's some terrain feature like that where it's it's not flat, because then you rattle and they have to come right to your stand to look over the edge to see what's on the other side of that ridge. That's being at the tops of the ridges or just slightly down one side or other, so they can go. If they're on one side, they can't see the other side. And if they're on that side, they can't see that side. So many times you just be on the big flats. I mean, you don't have an option. Sometimes it's just flat. But you see a lot of times when we rattle, those big ones will come in. They'll stand 100 yards and stare around. They don't see anything moving. They don't see anything. They'll turn around and walk away. Mm-hmm. I mean, not all the time. Sometimes they blast right into the tree and not even care. But I see more times than not, the older they get, when you get like a real big one, like at 6 years old or something, they're pretty sharp to that kind of stuff. Like the 4-year-olds and stuff, they'll come blasting right in. But so I'd say like that's a big advantage. And then I would say like from Halloween to like the 7th is my favorite time, because you don't want them when they're locked down. Like Halloween time is kind of the kickoff to the rut, and that's the time that those big ones will be checking scrapes. They're moving more, even though there's not very many does in heat. So they might just get more of a moving as you get to the middle of the month. It's kind of like that bell curve. It's where most of them are in heat. So a lot of the big ones are locked down. You're not going to see them. They're not going to move. And it's crazy how much they don't move, because you said we've seen it all here. And so you've seen plenty of them that they're with their doe, and you can watch them, see them from the stand. You're trying to get them. Hopefully they'll come another 100 yards closer, and you'll watch them. They lay down, they'll breed a doe. They'll sit there and they'll feed around on acorns. They won't leave a 10-foot circle, and they bed right back down again. And then, so I've sat there all day watching them. They do the same thing. They don't hardly move out of a 10-yard thing. You get there in the next morning, get at their same spot. They maybe have moved 50 yards, and they just do that same thing. They don't go out to the fields. Like I said, we were sitting right on the edge of like a big cornfield that we had cut. We'd mowed the corn, so all kinds of corn, 100 deer out there, sitting in the woods watching those. That buck was a big 10-point. I can think of the place that my buddy Joel has now. And then watching that big 10, they've never go out to the corn. Maybe they did at night, but the mornings, all day long, same little area. And, he'd breed her like 2 times during the day. The rest of the time, they just lay down, get up and feed, poop, pee. He'd run all the little bucks off, but they never left that little spot. And and that's why you don't get any pictures of them. You just see they just don't move much. They just kind of stay in the same little spot. And if you don't happen to be lucky enough to get that doe come to you, or you happen to set up a stand right where they're at, you're never going to see them. So it's just, I'd avoid the middle part as much as possible. I'd go like Halloween to the 10th, or take like, the 20th to the, over like Thanksgiving week or something like that. The beginnings of November, the last part of November. Obviously they're in between does all the time too. You can kill one anytime, but those are going to have more encounters, I think, beginning and end than in the middle.
And as far as, when you think of the deer you shot from Halloween to the 7th or 10th, whatever that end date is there a trend of more morning, midday, evening where you've had most success? Everyone wants to do the least amount of work to get the most amount of success. Yeah. So that's the root of this question here. Instead of the answer is obviously hunt as much as you can, but
it changes like to that, like the October stuff we're talking about. We basically only hunt evenings, and like mornings you'll see them on the camera. They'll be in there sometime in the mornings too, just as much as the evenings. But I never hunt mornings that much, because I think you just do more damage, because you're coming in and a lot of times you're bumping them out, and it's a lot of work for a little reward. Because like, just think of like, you got to get up an hour before and shower, get your stuff ready, and sneaking in there. You got like an hour to 2 hours, depending on how far away, what farm you're on and stuff, to get up there, and you have 5 minutes of hunting time. Okay, it's over. They already moved through. And if they don't move through, you don't get a shot at them. And it's a lot of work for a little reward. And I think that you can damage it more, do more harm than good, because when you're walking in there, that's the time deer are mostly moving, is that first hour and an hour before daylight. And a lot of times you're bumping them out. So a lot of times I think you might bump your buck before you ever even get a shot at him. And you're like, you could be doing more damage to it, that the buck's getting onto you if you start doing it too much. I've shot a couple early season in the morning, but they were kind of on that pattern that they were coming in the mornings more, like they were feeding, like that 204 that I shot back here behind the house right when we were building the house. That was a deer that was getting pictures of them on those scrapes in that bay. They're like this big field. If you went back behind our house, it goes a big long field, and there's a bay that comes off the backside, and then it goes straight again. You're getting pictures of them like daylight all the time in that like first hour of the morning. And I was like, okay, we're building a house right here. And so they're used to like people like coming, like workers and stuff in the mornings and stuff. And you still would see deer back in there in the morning. He was still coming, even with people working and banging and cutting and everything. I said, so I think this is probably one that I, just get in there in the morning, just go real early and just try to be in there, and just let it settle down for a bit and let them come in. and it worked. The first time I went out, just did the same thing he had been doing, came right to the scrape there and shot him at 15 yards, I think. But so that's just one. That was a special case because that's why cameras will really tell you that. And he was just using, like now you see so many of the deer in the evenings, that you're getting so many pictures of them in the evenings, and like you might get them coming out in daylight. Most of them are still after dark, but in the mornings it seems like most of them are in the dark and they're not really in there in daylight in the mornings. But they're way more regular in the evenings. So that's when, if it was the other way around, if they're in the mornings, we'd probably hunt mornings more. But still, walking in knowing that that's their peak time where most deer are on their feet, you're going to bump more deer there than in the afternoons when you know they're all bedded up and they're going to get up. So you just have way less chance of bumping them. And I always figure, for us especially, like if it was like me of 30 years ago and I had to work every day, I would probably hunt every morning too. But maybe not in my best spot that I was looking for one particular deer. I might try new places mornings, so I'm still out hunting and have that opportunity, but I don't want to mess up the one deer that I know that I have that I'm hunting. I don't want to bump him too many times and then not have, kind of ruin my chances in the evening when you have your best chance at him. Mm-hmm. So like right now, we just don't do it because we can hunt every day, so we just bide our time.
Yeah.
You got your deer you're going to shoot that you're after. And like I've always said, if we have a deer on our hit list, it's basically a death sentence for them. None of them make it through, hardly ever, unless they break or they just disappear and die or something like that. There's someone we could have shot early, and then you have dying of VHD or something like that. But we just bide our time, and we've got things set up. And you kind of, most of these deer, I know their personalities. I know where they live. I know where they're 40 that they want to spend all their time on. We're going to catch up to them. Mm-hmm. Just bide your time and be smart on it and just go in when it's right. And the little cool fronts that you got coming with the moon stuff, it's no-brainer every time.
Yeah. Make it sound easy.
No. I think it can be. I think maybe sometimes people try to overthink it.
I think that's
but it
fair,
takes work. It takes work, and like people don't have time off from work.
Yeah.
Like we do, and I get it. I mean, I understand 100%. We are very lucky to be able to have the places that we have, to hunt. But I don't necessarily think they're any better than any other farms around, because like I said, we hunt almost every day, so they get more pressure than any other. Our farms get way more pressure than any public piece in this state. I will guarantee it. There is not a piece of public property in Iowa that gets hunted every single day. I'll guarantee it. And like ours do. So I wouldn't be afraid to go hunt public stuff, anything else, because I guarantee it. Like we've got quite a few public places around here, and I've had like a lot of our camera guys say, you should just go down there and shoot one of those big ones. I said, I probably should. I mean, like right now, I just have so little time.
Yeah.
Trying to get all of your own stuff done, and now having stuff in Montana and Illinois and going to plant and all that stuff. It's just like, but it really would be fun. Like I would really enjoy that if like at some point when it slows down some. So I'm just going to go over there and I'm just going to put out some cameras. I'm going to find a big one, and then I'm just going to say, okay, I show you that I killed that deer as easily as I can here without even being able to put food plots in and stuff like that. Because as long as I know where he's living, if you get like, like right now you can find the acorns that could just go through, and there's trees that are just raining down. So you can get a lot of pictures like all day long, because a lot of them will bed by that and they'll get up and feed during the day. And we just don't really hunt in the timber, like I said, because I don't want to bump them out. But plus, it's just so hard to see anything in there when it's thick early. But you could do that. I would love to do that. I mean, you could go and find one on acorns and find one that's being regular, kind of like there on our food plots, and say you'd kill that deer just as easy as you would anywhere else. But it takes work. It takes time.